Imagine standing at the top of a 100-foot fire tower, the wind moving through the pines below you, two great rivers shimmering in the distance, and more than 34,000 acres of wild Minnesota stretching out in every direction. No buildings, no traffic, just forest and river and sky as far as you can see. That's what's waiting for you at St. Croix State Park. And that view is just the beginning. Welcome to Minnesota Explorer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Minnesota with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from scenic state parks and beautiful lakes to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible state. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Minnesota. There's a word that gets used about St. Croix State Park more than any other, and it's simply big. Minnesota's largest state park at nearly 34,000 acres sits in Pine County, about 16 miles east of Hinckley, along the St. Croix Scenic Byway. But size alone doesn't explain why this place feels so different from the moment you pass through the entrance. What makes St. Croix State Park special is what fills those acres. Two federally protected rivers, more than a century of layered human history, and a collection of hand-built stone and log structures that were designated a National Historic Landmark in 1997. There's nowhere else in Minnesota quite like it. The story of how this land became a park begins long before the park itself existed. The glaciers that carved Minnesota retreated roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, and as they went, the meltwater poured through what we now know as the St. Croix River Valley and the Kettle River Valley with tremendous force. Those rivers carved deep into the landscape, creating the bluffs and wooded ridges and river bottoms that define the park today. The Ojibwe people lived along these rivers for generations, using them as travel corridors, fishing grounds, and a source of the wild rice that sustained their communities. European fur traders arrived in the 1600s and 1700s, moving through on the St. Croix, a river that connects Lake Superior to the Mississippi and was one of the great commercial highways of the interior. After the fur trade wound down in the mid-1800s, a different industry moved in. Logging camps sprang up along the St. Croix, and for decades the river ran thick with timber floating downstream to the mills. By 1915, the logging era had moved on, leaving behind cleared land that attracted immigrant farmers who struggled to make a living from soil that was never meant for agriculture. The land wore out the people who tried to farm it. Then came the Great Depression, and with it, a remarkable chapter in the park's history. In 1934, the federal government purchased 18,000 acres of that struggling farmland, and in 1935, it became the St. Croix Recreational Demonstration Area, managed by the National Park Service. Young men from the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, arrived to transform it. The Works Progress Administration followed. Together, working through Minnesota winters and summers, they built roads, campgrounds, cabins, dining halls, a lodge, and a 100-foot fire tower. They planted trees and cleared brush and carved trails through terrain that had been stripped bare. Of the 164 buildings and structures they erected, most are still in use today. That's not just a point of historical pride. It's a testament to how well those young men built. When you arrive at the park and pull up to the St. Croix Lodge, you're looking at a building that went up in 1935. The logs and stonework, the original handcrafted furniture inside, the massive fireplace, all of it is original CCC construction. The lodge serves as the park's interpretive center, and it's genuinely worth stepping inside even if you're eager to get on the trail. The exhibits do a thoughtful job of capturing what the CCC experience was actually like. The young men who came here were often desperate for work, far from home, and they built something that has lasted nearly a century. There's a warmth to this building even on a cold day, and the view of the St. Croix River from near the lodge is one of those quiet moments that sneaks up on you. From the lodge, one of the most satisfying walks in the park follows a wide, flat trail eastward along the river to the site of the Yellowbanks CCC camp. The camp is gone now, but interpretive signs along the way tell the story of the men who lived and worked here, and the trail loops back on the paved bike path, giving you two very different experiences of the same stretch of park. It's a leisurely walk that takes maybe an hour and a half at an easy pace, And because most people head straight for the campgrounds or the fire tower, this trail often feels nearly empty. Speaking of the fire tower, it's a must. The tower was built by the CCC in 1937, and for decades after that, fire watchmen climbed those 134 steps and sat at the top for hours at a stretch, scanning the forest in every direction for any sign of smoke. No reading aloud, no distractions, just watching. 10-minute visits from colleagues were considered a luxury. When you climb those same steps today and step out onto the platform at the top, you get an immediate sense of why someone would sit up here for hours, because the view is extraordinary. On a clear day, you can see far up and down the St. Croix River Valley, the green canopy of the park spreading out below you, and on the interpretive signs at the top, you'll learn about the different forest layers and what you're looking at in the landscape. The tower is accessible by vehicle, which is helpful to know if you want to combine the climb with a picnic or a shorter hike nearby. One of the best hikes in the park leads to a place where the two rivers meet. From the Kettle River overlook, a trail winds down to the confluence of the St. Croix and Kettle Rivers, two federally protected waterways joining in a spot that feels genuinely remote, even though you can drive to the trailhead. The Kettle River is Minnesota's first designated wild and scenic river, a fast-moving, clear water stream that cuts through a landscape of jack pines and mixed forest before it empties into the St. Croix. Standing at the confluence is one of those rare moments in a Minnesota park where you feel genuinely far from the everyday world. The remote canoe campsite at Two Rivers, reachable only by water or a longer hike, sits near this spot and is one of the more memorable places to spend a night in the state park system. If you're paddling in, the park has canoe rentals available on summer weekends, and there are 8 canoe landings along the St. Croix within the park. If you have younger travelers with you, or if you simply want a place to slow down and breathe, Lake Clayton is the spot. The lake sits at the end of the paved 5.5-mile bike path, and the beach there is shallow and kid-friendly with a playground, sand volleyball, a picnic shelter, horseshoe pits, and a generous lawn for stretching out on a summer afternoon. It's a genuinely lovely place to spend a few hours, and the CCC-built spillway at the nearby Norway Point Group Center is another quiet reminder of the craftsmanship woven into every corner of this park. The trail system here is almost impossible to fully describe. 127 miles of hiking trails, 75 miles for equestrians, 21 miles of mountain biking, and in winter, 80 miles of snowmobile trails and 11 miles of cross-country ski trails. The Willard Munger State Trail runs through the entire park, connecting it to a broader network that stretches toward Duluth. The most dramatic hiking is in the southwest corner of the park along the Kettle River's steep, wooded banks, where the trail climbs and drops through terrain shaped by fast water and ancient stone. If you're visiting in late spring, the river is typically running high and fast, and the views from the bluff-top trails looking down into the valley are striking. Wildlife is part of the experience here in a real and present way. White-tailed deer move through the campgrounds without much concern for human visitors. Bald eagles and ospreys work the river corridors. On summer nights, coyotes call from the edges of the meadows. The park is also active in restoring jack pine habitat through controlled fire, and you may see areas where that restoration work is underway, a reminder that this landscape is still being tended and shaped. Camping options at St. Croix are genuinely extensive. The main campground has 211 drive-in sites across 3 loops, and there are also walk-in sites, backpack sites, 10 canoe and campsites, 40 equestrian sites, and 2 large group centers, Norway Point and Head of the Rapids, that together can accommodate 340 people. For those who want a roof but not a tent, the park has 5 cabins and 2 guest houses that sleep small groups and retain the original 1940s era design. They book up early in summer, so planning ahead pays off. St. Croix State Park is one of those places that rewards time and patience. It doesn't have a single dramatic centerpiece. No waterfalls, no towering cliffs. What it has is depth. 2 extraordinary rivers, a landscape shaped by ice and water and human labor, buildings that carry decades of stories, and more trails than you could walk in a week. First-time visitors are almost always surprised by how much is here, and repeat visitors tend to say they've never really seen all of it. When you're ready to explore a bit beyond the park's boundaries, Banning State Park near Sandstone is a natural companion. The Kettle River runs through Banning too, and here it puts on a show. Spring and early summer bring kayakers and canoeists to the turbulent rapids at Blueberry Slide, Mother's Delight, Dragon's Tooth, and Hell's Gate. names that capture the experience pretty well. The hiking trails there wind through dramatic sandstone formations and past the ruins of a 19th century quarry town, giving you a very different feel from the expansive forests of St. Croix. Back in Hinckley itself, the Hinckley Fire Museum is worth a stop. The 1894 Hinckley Fire was one of the most catastrophic wildfires in American history, killing more than 400 people in just hours, and the museum tells that story with care and detail. For a meal that's become something of a regional institution, Tobies Restaurant and Bakery in Hinckley has been feeding travelers for more than 70 years. The caramel and cinnamon rolls are legendary. People plan their routes through town around them, and the full menu covers everything from breakfast to dinner, with the kind of hearty, no-nonsense cooking that makes sense after a long day on the trail. For a more elevated evening, the Wynn's Steakhouse at Grand Casino Hinckley is the area's go-to for a sit-down dinner with a proper menu. Lodging options are comfortable and convenient. The park itself offers the best on-site experience with everything from tent sites to cabins. In Hinckley, the Grand Casino Hinckley Resort Complex has hotel rooms, indoor pools, and a spa. Several smaller motels and inn options are available in town as well. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination. Leave us a positive review to help others find the show. And share this episode with someone who loves exploring Minnesota. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Minnesota, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.